This is the wandering wood, this error's den, a monster vile whom God and man, a monster vile whom God and man does hate. Therefore I read, beware, fly, fly. Quoth then the fearful dwarf, this is no place for living men, but full of fire and greedy hardiment. The youthful knight could not for aught be stayed, but forth unto the darksome hole he went, and looking in, his glistering armour made a little glooming light, much like a shade, by which he saw the ugly monster plain, half like a serpent horribly displayed, but the other half did woman's shape retain, most loathsome, filthy foul, most loathsome, filthy foul, and full of vile disdain. And as she lay upon the dirty ground, her huge long tail her den all overspread, yet was in knots and many bouts upwound, pointed with mortal sting. Of her there bred 1,000 young ones which she daily fed, sucking upon her poisonous dugs, each one of sundry shapes, yet all ill-favoured. Soon as that uncouth light upon them shone, into her mouth they crept, and sudden all were gone. Their dam upstart out of her den afraid, and rushed forth hurling her hideous tail about her cursed head, whose folds displayed were stretched, now forth at length without entrail. She looked about, and seeing one in mail, armed to point, sought back to turn again. For light she hated as the deadly bale. I want in desert darkness to remain, where plain none might see her, nor she see any plain. Which when the valiant elf perceived, he leapt as lion fierce upon the flying prey, and with his trenchant blade her boldly kept from turning back, and forced her to stay. Therewith in rage she loudly gan to bray, and turning fierce her speckled tail advanced, threatening her angry sting him to dismay, who naught aghast his mighty hand enhanced, the stroke down from her head unto her shoulder glaunced. Much daunted with that dint, her sense was dazed, yet kindling rage herself she gathered round, and all at once her beastly body raised with double forces high above the ground, the wrapping up her wreathed stern around, leapt fiercely upon his shield, and her huge train all suddenly about his body wound, that hand or foot to stir he strove in vain. God help the man so wrapped in error's endless train. His lady, sad to see his sore constraint, cried out, Now, now, Sir Knight, show what ye be, add faith unto your force, and be not faint. Strangle her, else she sure will strangle thee. That when he heard in great perplexity, his gall did grate for grief and high disdain, and knitting all his force got one hand free, wherewith he gripped her gorge with so great pain, that soon to loose her wicked bands did her constrain. Therewith she spewed out of her filthy maw a flood of poison horrible and black, full of great lumps of flesh and gobbets raw, which stunk so wildly that it forced him slack his grasping hold, and from her turn him back. Her vomit full of books and papers was, with loathly frogs and toads which eyes did lack, and creeping sought way in the weedy grass. Her filthy paw break all the place defiled has. The same so sore annoyed has the knight, that well nigh choked with the deadly stink, his forces fail, ne can no longer fight, whose courage when the fiend perceived to shrink, she poured forth out of her hellish sink her fruitful cursed spawn of serpents small, deformed monsters foul and black as ink, which swarming all about his legs did crawl, and him encumbered sore, but could not hurt at all. As ill bestead and fearful more of shame than of the certain peril he stood in, half furious until his foe he came, resolved in mind all suddenly to win, or soon to lose before he once would lin, and struck at her with more than manly force, that from her body full of filthy sin gathered themselves about her body round, weening their wanted entrance to have found at her wide mouth. But being there withstood they flocked all about her bleeding wound, and sucked up their dying mother's blood, making her death their life, and eke her hurt their good. That detestable sight, him much amazed, to see the unkindly imps of heaven accursed devour their dam, on whom while so he gazed, having all satisfied their bloody thirst, their bellies swollen, he saw with fullness burst, and bowels gushing forth. Well were the end of such as drunk her life, the which them nursed. His lady, seeing all that chanced, from far approached in haste to greet his victory, and said, "Fair knight, born under happy star, who see your vanquished foes before you lie, well worthy be you of that armoury, wherein you have great glory won this day, and proved your strength on a strong enemy, your first adventure. Many such I pray, and henceforth ever wish, that like succeed it may."